Hi, I'm Dr. Greg Bliss, and kids call me Dr. G, but if I get away with it, I will accept any title you wish to give me, but otherwise you can just call me Greg. Having said that, I've got a lot of years of experience in education. So if I use big words or fail to communicate clearly, I really appreciate communication back to me in an email, asking questions, or just wanting clarification. This is an introductory set of videos. There's 4 videos, and then introduction to each one of the staff members in our program. This is introduction to Scholeschooling education, and Scholeschooling is an intended redundancy, right? And if you watch the introductory video, which I've asked you to do, you'll understand the idea that skole comes from the Latin word, it's the root from which we get school. And it's meant to be the idea of repose. It's learning in a state of repose and leisure. And so the idea is you work hard and do your things and whatever you have to do, and then you go into a place where you're in repose and you learn, and that's where you learn. Now, the problem with public schools right now is there is no skole, okay? Kids are concerned about whether they can get beaten up, bullied, not loved, not cared for, rejected, whatever it is. They don't have that learning space isn't there. So by going into the micro school world and going under the church umbrella and working with people that are committed in that micro school concept, we're pulling our kids out of a chaotic, violent-oriented situation and putting them into a place where they can learn. And so that's one of our chief goals, is a safe place to learn. So the schooling is a redundancy, right? Skole means school, schooling means schooling. So what we're doing here actually is schooling about schooling. Okay, who would have thought? The reason for that, might sound like an interesting play on words, is we're dealing with a radical level of innovation right now. And as I said in my introductory video, this tape that I'm doing to you could have been done in a studio, could have been done maybe even in a TED Talk someday. But that would take hours of preparation, lighting, coordination, yada, yada, yada. We upload it, we create a video track, right? This 30-minute video is taking me no more than 45 minutes to produce from beginning to end. The technological reality there is that the end of what I'm going to give you will also have closed captioning. So you can get a transcript of what I'm doing and the video, all done in 45 minutes for a 30-minute class. Boom. That level of technological innovation is extreme. It is like the Gutenberg press. It will change the way we educate over the next 30 to 40 years completely. It is amazing, right? Okay, having said that, the degree of radical innovation in that process is representing the kingdom of God. We're coming in representing the kingdom of God in this. Our core philosophical concept is the Imagi Dei. That's the image of God in the individual student. I know of no curriculum in the world that is designed around the Imagi Dei besides ours. Now, what am I saying there? What I'm saying is curriculum is this circular track that you go on in the Roman world. It's what the horses would run on, like in Ben-Hur, right? There would be a curricular. So this curricular that the kid runs on each year, they have a curriculum. This curricular, you as the learning coach, you as the pod leader, come in and design that individual curricular for that student. I don't know anybody that does that except us, but it's not that difficult now. Right? Now, I might be boasting, I might be wrong, but please, if you find somebody that actually does that, they talk about personalized education, but they don't talk about personalizing the curriculum. Now, we're not talking about just adaptation and modification like we do in special education. We're talking about designing the curricular around the individual student. Now, we work with a company called Alpha and Omega. They have a great product, Initia, that really helps us in this. It's a mastery-based program. All of our Bible courses are in that program. But the individual pod leader gets to select the curricular for that pod and bring everybody else into that. So the group in the pod works in that. Now this brings us up to the issue of microschooling. Okay? Microschooling is a major innovative adaptation that came out of COVID and just a little bit before, that is the combination of three major components. Now, I'm writing my PhD dissertation on this, so I might know what I'm talking about, but okay. If anybody has any kind of dispute on this or questions, please let me know. It is a radical form of innovation. And so microschooling basically comes in and says, listen, we don't need the building. We don't need all the administrative structures. We can go back to a one-room schoolhouse. In essence, that's what it's talking about. In that one-room schoolhouse, we have a teacher that is able to teach, okay, the kids and teach them on an individualized level. Well, how do you actually do that? Well, we do it by working with Alpha and Omega, each kid in their own development level, dealing with the curriculum that they need. So we have two different levels, development level and curriculum, the actual academic curriculum. I know I'm going a little bit faster, but this is the point. We separate the roles here, right, into four different roles under this new innovative system. Okay? Under microschooling, we've separated the roles, the distinctive roles, into four different roles that facilitate this process. Where you're going, well, what about the good old brick and mortar school? What about just having a teacher there? Well, the problem is it's A, inefficient, B, it doesn't work very well, and C, all of the above. It does not support the formation of the Imagi Dei. You can't do that. It just doesn't work. That's why classical education has always worked with the idea of an individualized tutor relationship with the student. That's classical education. So a lot of people want to talk about classical education as a Socratic method and yada, yada, yada. They're still teaching in the brick and mortar schoolhouse methodology, and they're not really being classical at all, even though they're teaching Latin. So be careful to understand that classical education is aimed upon the formation of the individual student around the basic virtues of Western civilization. So you formulate all your teaching around these virtues. All of our teachers, all of our learning coaches take the class in classical education. How do you do that? Okay? So the byline, and then please use it if anybody wants to ask the question what you're doing, a valueless education is valueless. You can accumulate knowledge, you can take tests, but if you don't have values, then it is valueless. Modern, progressive, humanistic programs are by nature, by their own declaration, valueless. So again, I mentioned this in my introductory video. The public school system is in a huge state of crisis. They're operating in a progressive mindset, and they cannot steer the boat because they don't have any values. Their values are let everybody choose their own values. Well, that's no value, and it's a valueless education. Okay, I could say that again and again and again, but it's a nice little meme. It's a nice little byline here. Well, what are you doing? Well, we're microschooling. Well, what's microschooling? Well, microschooling is we focus on the children and the individualization of the children under the image of God as Christians. Well, why would you do that? Because a valueless education is valueless, right? It's a nice little meme. Don't worry about it. Moving forward on the microschooling concept, there's four different roles that we participate in. The first one is a learning coach. The second one is a teacher of record. The third one is pod leader. And the fourth one is administration. This allows the radical innovation to occur. Good examples with Morse code, right? Morse code came in and changed the way that we communicate, changed the way things were done. And when Morse code came in, there had to be a code operator that typed the Morse code in. There had to be people that put up the wires between the Morse code stations. And you would go in, and there'd be a Morse code person, and there would be a Morse code person on the end who would take the message and translate it. Okay? There was a whole system that was created in that context. So that's kind of like what's happening here. We're used to having, for instance, a mailman come and pick up your mail and take it to where it goes. That's a different model than the Morse code. The Morse code required a different set of features to be able to communicate effectively, to be able to get the message across. Different set of features. Same thing happened with the Gutenberg press, right? All of a sudden, you didn't have to have priests that were educated in Latin. You had to have a book written that people could read. Different dynamic, right? Same idea. We have a message to communicate, but we have a different way of communicating it. So, in this situation, learning coach, teacher of record, pod leader, and administration, it's all designed around microschooling in the present level of innovation. I know what I'm talking about sounds confusing, but stay with me because it'll make perfect sense once you practice it. The learning coach, I'll be going into a video on that in a few minutes. The learning coach basically focuses the student on task. That's it. The task, focusing the student on task, getting them to the seat, getting them to focus on their schoolwork. If they need a break, if there's a problem with the communication, if there's something going on, the learning coach focuses the student on the task of learning, and you get better and better and better at it. The teacher of record is a person who has a degree of mastery concerning education and understands the mental processes in the mind concerning particular subject areas they're teaching. So every teacher of record has to go through an educational process and has to have an associate's degree or higher in what they're doing or a level of experience as a teacher. So they know how to teach. They have 14 years of educational experience in the United States or English-speaking world. They know what they're doing. They're a teacher of record, but they're not dealing with getting the kid to the task of learning, which also includes grading papers and that type of thing. That's all part of the task. When I say grading papers, I mean grading. Going a little bit too fast here. I got to get out of a Schole, which is not being at rest, get into Schole, which is being at rest. So excuse me if I'm going too fast here. The teacher of record is the one that does the grading for the student and helps the formation of their mind in an individual subject area. Then we have the pod leader. The pod leader is the one that creates the environmental space for the kids to learn. Whatever that is whatever it is. It does not have to be a multi-million-dollar brick-and-mortar school. My goal at the end of the day is to say, hey, I'd like to compare the results of our Baptist basement versus your $25 million school building. Our Baptist basement produces better results than your $25 million school building. Remember the meme, because a valueless education over here with the $25 million is valueless, right? We're teaching values and imbuing them into the students through classical model. The administration is the thing that holds all this together, works with the state, receives funding to produce a higher, better quality of education. Every year the kids are tested in a standardized education. You'll see this extraordinary, our experience has been this extraordinary speed of growth because three things are happening. One, they're in an environment where they are loved and cared for and they're safe so they can learn. Two, there's a mastery-based education that is given as fast as they want to go or as slow as they need to go. Three, they're assessed on a regular basis on a formative assessment, then at least once a month by a skilled PhD-level professional that's assessing them so that they can develop at the speed in which they can go, trying to get through the curricular as soon as possible. So you will see this rise in academic performance in this system over 2 years that will actually stagger you because you're meeting all the right components. In conclusion, I just want to say one of the things in the next video we're going to get into is the issue of how we do the assessments. And we both assess the teachers and we assess the students, and we have an assessment system so we can get through that curricular as quickly as possible. It's going to be our next video. Thank you for your time. I know I've talked really fast. If you have questions, please answer them by talking to me. Okay? We need to interact on this. Now, there are 3 questions at the conclusion here. The video is done. There's 3 questions I need you to answer me in writing by email. Okay? The first question is, what is Schole? What does it mean? Second question is, what is microschooling and what does it mean? The third question is, what does the Imagi Dei have to do with education and what does that mean? And I want you to respond in 1 or 2 or 3 sentences. If you don't know, then contact me and say, Dr. Bliss, I'm not really getting this. You're going a little bit too fast for me. Can you break it down? Can you slow it down? Can you explain it more? And I will do so. Thank you so much for your time. The end of our first video.